If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to be notified of future videos. Thank you.
Hello Internet, we are back. We have Kevin Johnson with us, 3-2 Battalion. One of his company commanders made a comment on one of his videos, said the man was a legend. Now, we're going to find out now how big a legend he really was. Because we stopped the last video, the last episode, where you could see the enemy approaching. Kevin, welcome back. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate you. Now, can you just give us a little bit of background for in case somebody forgot what happened last week?
Yeah, well, since the Second World War, it was the biggest mobilizing of the SADF since the Second World War. And there were towns in the south of Angola that had to be taken. These were big logistical HQs of SWAPO, so that they could use it as a springboard into Namibia. They were protected by FAPLA. There were Russian advisors, soldiers in those towns as well. There must have been 4 or 5 that we had to neutralize, or the SADF had to neutralize. But the 2 big ones were Songongo and Onjiva, especially Onjiva. That was the headquarters. That's where the aerodrome was, etc., etc. So this big contingent of SADF were going to hit some of the towns simultaneously. And I think they hit Onjiva first, which was a little bit further up north near the river. Okay, this op started early in the morning. We, as Charlie Company, we were a stopper group. We were about 6-7 Ks out of Onjiva, northeast of Onjiva. Yep, north or east. And boy, oh boy, that morning, it was fun. These buccaneers were coming in low. We could hear the artillery being fired at them. Certain types of mirages came in. I think there were even impalas. And then the bombardment started. And basically what was happening is they were softening them up so that 3-2 Battalion could move in. Commandant Ferreira was down there on the ground. It was the first time ever that all 7 companies of 3-2 had joined this big contingent of the SADF. We had our motor group there, 81s, because that was the sum of who we were. And as I said in the previous video, I can truly say to you that 3-2 Battalion was ready to rumble. It was the first time ever that the enemy was going to see the whole battalion in action. So and then one of the guys that was with us in the one platoon said his whole platoon of Charlie Company actually saw this mirage being fired upon by a SAM. I personally didn't see it. So sum it up quickly, we were lying between a tarred road and a gravel road, and we were between the two. So we had just moved to 4 platoons. I have some doubt when I think about that, but I'm pretty sure we had moved from 3 to 4 platoons. So we had 2 platoons up front, and that's where Tienes was. And he was the company commander. And then we had a half moon. And I was, if he was on the 12 o'clock, I was on the 6 o'clock. So I was nearer to the gravel road. And so now I heard this noise in the bush. And obviously being in the police where I worked in the bush, looking for these people smuggler trucks. Okay, this was a little bit different. This was, you could actually hear that distinct, what are they called, tanks, you know, that it makes a certain noise. And we could hear these were heavy armored stuff. So what came out of the bush first on this gravel road were some Garys. I think the one was a blue color. And at that stage, I had taken my platoon sergeant, Sergeant Mendes, he was a Malatu, Bambi, my machine gunner that was always with me, and I took one of my guys with the RPG, and we moved out so that we could look down this road. and they were probably about max 400 meters down the road. And they were sort of climbed out the vehicles, they checking us out. And it's actually quite a weird thing because we're checking them out, they checking us out. You know, I'm fully black is beautiful. We're in camouflage fatigue. They would not have seen camouflage necessary down there in Onjeva, because I'm pretty sure, yeah, 3-2 might have actually done the attack down there in Brown Neutral, you know, so that there wouldn't be any friendly fire because they were involved with lots of other SADF people. So there was a moment of pausing, and by then, being the good company commander he was, Tiernes, he was small in build, but very muscular. He had the previous year been shot, okay? So he recovered remarkably. He had a stomach, took an AK-47 round. He had recovered remarkably. He had been moved from that company that he was in. I think he was platoon commander there. And now it was his moment to shine. And he came over to us. And I looked into his eyes, because as a policeman, I always look into people's eyes. And boy, oh boy, I said to myself, I've got a company commander that's on top of things. He had already made contact with up the line. And thinking about it this morning, some of the events that then happened thereafter, I think was due to the fact that he wasn't reporting through to our forward hag. I think we were part of another group. So we had someone else, another commandant, because normally commandants. And I think we had another commandant. And obviously, you know, this guy never had big experience. He's going to be looking to other people. And so all of a sudden, you know, it's like, who's taking accountability here? And Tina said to me, these guys are ours. He said, but then he immediately said, but I'm not seeing any white. Did you see any white people? I said, no. He said, well, there is recce's in the area, whether it's ours or whether it's from special forces. They in camo, but there's always whites there, and we're not seeing whites here. It's definitely not 3-2 Battalion, so this must be the enemy. So I look at the Malatu sergeant, and he looks at me, and we go, nada. And I say to Tiernes, these are not our buddies. So he takes an instruction now for the second time. Move away. No, sorry, I lie. Get them to park. I mean, you know, this was like quite kiddie now, but hilarious. But at the same time, you know, you've got to be careful what's going to go down here, because we don't know how many of them are actually in that convoy. And the most important thing that's going through my head is if there's a 14.5 there, which would be towed, okay, anti-aircraft, and we've had experience where they fire it, you know, on the ground at you. I mean, you don't want that thing being fired at you. So in my mind, like, how am I going to take that out? So I say to the RPG guy, look here, I'll tell you when to fire, because now I want to see whether they bring this 14.5 forward, because then they would have just started to spray us. That never happened, so that was good news. And then after, I don't know whether the second or the third instruction, we were told to move away, to move east. So that would have meant we're going to go over the tar road. Now, before we started to rumble there, I just need to say a couple of things. First of all, after watching the previous video, I had made a mistake. I was not the most senior NCO there. I was the second. So that's the first thing I want to correct. Then, also in the previous video, I just want to correct something, because we were then not speaking about 3-2 Battalion yet, and you asked me the question of the food pyramid, Milieuskop at top, in best food, and then below was the police college and the infantry school equivalent. But now that we're talking about 3-2, I've got to put now 3-2 Buffalo's food right at the top. So number one prize for food culinary went to Buffalo, number two Milieuskop, and joint third was the infantry school and the police college. We had at Buffalo a SP sergeant. You know, he was big and he looked a bit like Idi Amin. He was huge. And let me tell you, he was the big daddy of the SPs. And when Big Daddy or Falcon used to come there, I wouldn't say they behaved like mates, but you could see there was a warmness in their relationships. And he handled, because he was getting older, he handled all the kitchen stuff and that. But, you know, he had been a combat soldier before. So that was Jumbo. He was an absolute icon there at, you know, like they used to speak about Teddy the lion. We had our Jumbo. He just happened to be a human. Well, what is the other thing that I felt that I needed to correct? Because obviously my mates and that will be listening to this. Oh, you asked me the question of alcohol and drugs and that. On reflection, I can honestly say to you, it was probably in the 3 years that I was there, and I was probably there longer than most people. I only knew of 2 whites that used to smoke a bit of weed, but nothing like heavy. And then when it came to the SPs, okay, sometimes when a big ops was going down, and we like had walked in that night to attack the next morning, there would be a bit of weed being smoked, but nothing stupid and irresponsible. So, you know, to me, that's the sum of the alcohol drug situation. So now we over the tar road. I was the last to go over with, you know, the few that were standing on the tar road. Tinus went ahead of me because obviously I wanted to check where these guys are going. And they had also then decided, not necessarily in front of the convoy, but somewhere in the convoy itself, had decided they're going over as well. So we got over to the other side and there was an open shona, and we saw then some trees and that, and we got into that sort of more bushy area, and basically we went down into a position ready for the attack to come. At that stage, they still telling us it's friendly fire. So this could be the second time or the third time that they're telling us this bit of fire in your hearing, and the activity, etc., is still, to be specific, they spoke something about military intelligence was bringing out the hardware that they had captured. Right. Now, I've not spoken to anyone about this particular Protea ambush that we went into. So this is all what I'm recalling from my own mind. So those who read it that were there, okay, you might find some differences in it, but it rolled out pretty much like I'm going to explain it. So we're there, and on the third or fourth time, because I'm pretty close there by Tierners, because I'm going to be handling the lining up of the RPGs. So we've got all of the 8 RPGs in a row, okay? And then the senior NCO, okay, he had been speaking to the guys on the mortar pipes, and then obviously, you know, all the other lieutenants and the other corporals and that were making sure that the LMGs were loaded properly. So we were all ready to rock and roll. We didn't put claymores out. And I suppose we didn't put claymores out because we knew we were going to be continuously moving. And that's a bit of a hassle. So we didn't put the claymores out. We already got these bloody 8 RPGs nicely lined up. The number 2 that helps carry the rockets, they there as well. And then on the other side, we see I think it's BRDMs. We see them. So we think to ourselves, now you're thinking, where's the PT-76 as well? And so the funny thing about it is, you're not at that stage thinking about them shooting that big stuff at you. But what you are thinking of is PT-76s. Because it's light infantry, you never get trained on what's on a PT-76. You just know it's a tank. But what's going through our mind, because I'm standing with the senior NCO, and he's the longest serving guy besides the company commander, and him and I are talking there, and I'm saying to him, I wonder if this thing's got PKMs on top, like an LMG, because that's what we're more worried about, because we light infantry now thinking, we're not even thinking about if they fire this tank stuff at us. But anyhow, I'm going to say to you right up front so that we don't get blasé about what I'm going to share with you from my side. The enemy was crap. I just got to tell you right up front, they were crap. So we checked them moving and that, and we thought to ourselves, no, we're in a crap position for the ambush. So what we're going to do is we're going to move further up in this actual thick bush. So we moved further up. We did exactly the same thing, went into attack mode, 2 platoons up front, half moons, so just in case they come from the back, because at that stage we don't know where they are. They could have all scattered. So we've got to protect ourselves, 360. Then at that stage, not the HQ, because I don't know what they were smoking there at the HQ, but I'll tell you something now, from poor Tinus, and then I realized, where I'm here at 3-2 to learn also how to be a businessman one day, owning my own company. I then realized immediately, whilst he was looking to the senior NCO and myself, because believe it or not, even though I'd only been there 6 months, I was like one of the senior guys and experienced. So while he was looking towards us, it was always easy for us, Chris, because we were not the guy that's making the decision. There's a big difference. You can be a great number 2, but when you've got to step up, it's a different ball game. So immediately I was looking and thinking, yeah, there must be a lot of things going through his mind that I don't have to worry about. Anyhow, he decided, that's it. As a young company commander, Tinus at that stage couldn't have been older than 23. He had decided enough's enough. We're taking charge. So he immediately called in for Impalas. We don't want Mirages coming because you can get hurt with those stuff coming in to attack. So here's an interesting thing to learn as an entrepreneurial person. They telling us it's friendly, friendly, friendly. He makes a decision, it's the enemy. He now tells them by calling in an attack. No one fights him. Think of that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
3-4 times they're telling him. And then he now has enough. Obviously, he's conferring with the Malatu guys. I just want to also say, just to give you an idea of what we're now going to engage at about 1 o'clock, because nothing's happened quite yet, through to 2 o'clock the next morning. I want to just bring big respect to the SPs. Right. So, 4 platoons, and we've got platoon sergeant SPs, 2 Malatus, 2 blacks. One of them mine, Malatu. They go to 5 reconnaissance. I just want people to, when they're listening to this, to understand the power of our SPs, because the whites, we were very inexperienced in this, what was coming. So the SPs, 2 of the platoon sergeants, they go on to 5 reconnaissance. They make it, and Da Costa, he goes into the small teams there at 5, and Da Costa goes all the way through, not just as a small team operator, but he climbs the rank doing the army courses and that. And I stand to correction, but you did tell me after I saw the photo of him that he is now he's not the RSM of 5, he's the RSM of the whole of Special Forces in South Africa.
Yes, that's what James Tate told us once he saw the picture of him.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can put this picture here. I'm not sure we should or shouldn't. But yes, definitely, he became a RSM of 5, and then he went up. Now we're Special Forces Brigade Sergeant Major. Fantastic
Right.
man.
So we got him as the 1 platoon sergeant. My platoon sergeant, he becomes an operator at 5 as well. Something else I must mention, because it's now been declassified. I wasn't in the ops, but in the previous year, 1980, there was a clandestine operation that 3-2 Battalion done. And for that reason, they couldn't get air cover. So they went in on their own. No support from anyone because it was a clandestine operation. Commandant Dion Ferreira Falcon, he took them in. And when I say he took them in, he wasn't parked off miles and miles away. He went in with them. It wasn't even the full battalion like we were in Ops Protea. It was 1, 2, 3, max 4 companies. My Charlie company was in the main attack group. Before they even reached the base, okay, it was Sevarti. Before they even reached the base, they were being fired upon. Before they even reached the base, they had 14-5s being fired upon them. This was warfare where it was trench to trench, bunker to bunker, and they hadn't even hit the main base. This was half a battalion going in there with our 81 support. The recce's were there. We had some vehicles in the rear echelon or stopper groups with Brownings on it, but the actual attack was done by light infantry, RPGs, LMGs, so on and so forth. My guys, my company, together with 3 other companies, hit in Sevarti a full brigade. That's like 3,500 plus FAPLA, not SWAPO, FAPLA. So they had some heavy assets there. It was our biggest loss ever. But I can tell you now, you can go buy the books and that. FAPLA then realized what it is to come up against the Buffalo Soldiers. We gave them a thrashing, an absolute thrashing. 15 guys paid their lives there. Some of them were from Charlie Company. It was SPs and whites. So there we go. We've got now Charlie Company that's just experienced that. And there's many, many other fights before that as well. So we move up and we're now in line, and here's the 8. So now he gives the instructions through, and now we wait, and the Impalas come. I tell you something now, that one Impala, he was coming in so low I could see the pilot. And they did not shoot many rounds off, because what we had done is we had used mortars to pinpoint exactly where they were, the enemy, and we put smoke where we were, to just show them clear who's who in the zoo. But they would obviously not drop bombs, but they would use their 50, I think it was 50 mils that they had on there, but they didn't come specifically, Koos, for this sortie. They had been engaging somewhere else, because there was a big thing going down there at Sungonga and Nonjiva. So they had obviously, used a lot of their ammo. And there was very, very little 50s hammered on these people. So anyhow, they then started to attack us. And we had decided to go on the offensive. And Tiernis led that. I was back with the RPGs. Sorry, he took the RPGs with him, and I was with the mortars. And we started to give him cover with the mortars. Obviously, there was no resistance really coming in any significant way from these people. I'm going to say this with the greatest respect. They were crap. And we managed to do what we had to do there. We took out a couple of vehicles on that. And then we had called in the gunships, because the gunships will come in on the instruction of the company commander. So it's the company commander's responsibility to make sure that he's protecting his gunships when they come in. I'm pretty confident that because they were coming in numbers, Captain Neil Ellis would be coming in. This guy was phenomenal. And for something like that, he would be coming in. I can't confirm 100%, but a high percentage that it was him. So what he would have done, I'm not sure whether he brought 4 with him, plus himself, or whether he brought 6 with him. So what he would do for something like that, he would have not been the gunship guy with the 20 mils in the door. He would have had a smaller caliber, because now he's got to look after his guys, instruct them, etc. And he flies higher than them, and then they in circles. So he's on his way. But what actually happens in the fight with these guys on the ground, we hit a truck that's an ammo truck. And in the ammo truck, there's 122 mils, these rockets. Boy, oh boy. And you know, when it's Guy Fawkes and you buy these jumping jack flags where it's hopping all over the place, well, these things were firing off and then tumbling on the ground. So we had to all duck in case they hit us. And then obviously they gain off into the air, but they're just looping all the way up into the air and that. So, oh, please, you know, Neil, stay away, because, you know, one of those things could hit him. So he had to like circle somewhere a little bit away from us. And when that all calmed down, he came in with his either him +4 or him +6. And then they stay in a circle and he's communicating with Tierney. So it's just the two of them talking. And I'll tell you something now with Neil Ellis, there's others from HQ butting in. He tells them very nicely, you know, bugger off. It's just him and the company commander. Obviously, if something happens to Tierney, we know who will take over. So there'll always be communication up there. And I would imagine if he got shot down, you know, there would be someone else up there that would take over. Thank God none of that actually happened. So now it's softening up. Okay. Now, because they're up there in the air, they can see where the enemy is breaking loose and where they're going. They're not up for the fight. And now what happens is we move again to a better place. We go down. We get ourselves into our normal sort of TB. And I reckon because we felt that that's where we were going to park off for quite a while, because now we haven't got this big force coming at us, we started to put out claymores, and, you know, we thought this is where we're going to be for quite a while. And then what actually happened is we, with the help from the gunships and that, we started to go out in platoons. And then there was small engagements, take out 2 vehicles here. Then all of a sudden there's 10 of them thinking, oh, they're going to now take us on, and we would engage with them. And that's how it went. And then there'd be a lull. And then all the platoons would come back, because there was always one platoon looking after our temporary base. Then the guys would come back and have something to eat, and the guys would be joking with one another. And I'll be honest with you, what I noticed there, and also into the rest of my career, the guys didn't really talk much about what they had done, other than sharing with one another what you've got to be careful of, etc. And I think that was due to the fact that the unit was in so many engagements that, you know, it was no big deal anymore. I'm sure with some of the SPs, they were probably thinking, geez, when are we going to have time to have proper food and that, that type of thing? Or are we going to find food? Or are we going to find money or whatever it is? And obviously they were bringing some nice weapons back and that. And because I had this 14-5 thing in my mind, I was just reassuring, telling the guys all the time, please just make sure that there's no 14-5s because that could hurt us. So that went on. The gunships obviously had to go and refuel. And they might have come back one time later again. The reason why I say that is that they came there at about, let's say, 2:30, because it started about 1. They would have been there earlier, but the imps had to come in first, and also we told them to stay back, so they must have used up quite a bit of fuel in the air till those 122s that obviously had quietened, and they'd say, yeah, they must have come back again. And then what actually happened is, before it was starting to get dark, they came and they saw, not too far from where we were, they saw tracks of the tanks. Right, so now we're up for that. So off a platoon goes. There's another platoon close by, so they're making their way there. And that's where the firefight started again. And we were engaging with more of the enemy. At that stage, it didn't seem like SWAPO were amongst them, because bear in mind, back at Onjiva, it was actually the logistical HQ of SWAPO to attack into Avambuland and protected by FAPLA. But this was definitely a FAPLA group of people that were trying to get out of the Onjiva area. So we were engaging with FAPLA. I know the one guy I checked that we had killed, he was a captain. What we also picked up, that there were children in the area in this convoy. So, we had a platoon making sure that these kids were far away from all this activity. And then, I suppose it was just meant to be, Tiernus is down to a section. Because what he did is, we had a platoon where the SPs had just come out of training, so they were a whole new bunch of SPs. They might have had some army experience, but they weren't seasoned 3-2 battalion guys, because the war was heating up and we had to train more people, so we used to go and recruit there in Namibia and the southern part of Angola new SP. So we had a brand new platoon, and it just happened to be that the platoon sergeant, the leader group, and the platoon commander were just fresh also out of infantry school, 2 months earlier. So Tiernus knew, he's going to have to stick with them. So he's out there with them. So this was a good, sort of, opening to their careers in Angola, because they then hit near these tanks. They saw 2 brand new vehicles, and the next minute, it was like a kraal, and it was like a hedge, and these 6, 7, 8 people stood up, and then they started to engage. There was a little bit of a high ground, and the one machine gunner went down already, and he just opened up with the machine gun. So fortunately, none of our guys were actually hurt. We could definitely see some running, and then when Tiernus got, it was, I think, Tiernus, or it could have been the platoon sergeant, they got over the kraal. There was a guy lying there, face down, and turned him over, and was white. So then we knew, this doesn't look like a Cuban. So we knew, this is a Russian. So anyhow, so that whole thing continued for perhaps another hour, and then they came across another PT-76 tank. So Tiernus had to make a decision, I think, even to break up the section further. Now we Puma type of strength for the back of a Puma, so there's no more than 13 in a section, and it's Tiernus and I think the platoon commander as well. So there's about 14 of them. So if you left half of the section behind, he's down to 6, 7 people. And then they finally engaged again. And then they shot some more people in another ambush, and they caught a Russian sergeant major. So when they got there to check who they'd obviously engaged with, they then realized that these were more Russians. So there were 2 Russian women, all in uniform, 2 Russian men, and the capturing of the sergeant major. Very quickly, what we had discovered, because the sergeant major couldn't speak English, but he could speak Portuguese. So what we immediately discovered is that one of the guys, either the guy that was lying there with the 2 women or the first guy, he was the commanding officer of Onjiva logistics. So basically SWAPO and FAPLA and everyone, he was the guy that was obviously in charge. He was a lieutenant colonel. The other dude, I'm not quite sure what his position was, but according to the sergeant major, he was a lieutenant colonel. The 2 women, the one woman was the one lieutenant colonel's wife, and the other woman was the sergeant major's wife. So that's the situation going down. Then there's still a little bit of vagueness to this, but his 10-year-old boy went missing. So now we had to look for him. We couldn't find him. But then again, there were a lot of civilians that had left Onjiva as well, so that made it quite difficult. So, you know, he might have been found somewhere by the civilians, because there was big convoys of civilians going back to Onjiva, because that's what we had told them. You'll be safe in Onjiva. And the SADF down there knew that, you know, these locals would be coming back. And they were all relaxed about that, because they just wanted to get SWAPO and FAPLA out of Onjiva and Songonga. So that stage, when they came back to our temporary base, the other 2 platoons were out and they were engaging, and my platoon, because the mortars were now there. So I was basically in that temporary base. So they started to all come back, etc. Obviously, we, you know, treat the sergeant major properly. The troops and they all want to make coffee for themselves and that. And then I said to the sergeant major, I mean, you can imagine, where's his boy? His wife's dead. I mean, it's just must have been, the shit must have been going through his head, must have been frightening. So anyhow, you know, you look at him, think to yourself, I'm not even going to tell him. So we organized coffee for him, and I had a bottle of whiskey with me. So we just put 3 tots of whiskey in the coffee without telling him, you know, just to hopefully that would work a little bit. And I've got to say to you, you know, it was the first time really that we got close up to a live person and he's there and everything. And there was no animosity from our people. There was no like people wanting to poke him, whatever it is. He was more concerned about, you know, it's fucking cold tonight, you know, who's going to give up the, you know, who's going to give their sleeping bag for the dude, because he's not going to sleep, they're cold. And, you know, we got to look after him and we've got to give him food. And as I said to you, got the one troop to make coffee, pour the whiskey in there. Troop looks at me and smiles. I say, hey, you mustn't think it's for you. You give it to the sergeant major. Because the troop thought he's going to go back to his buddy now with you know, some coffee and whiskey in it. But that wasn't to be. It was given to the sergeant major. So it was pretty quiet. Oh, there was one little group that came past us. So there was activity there again. We hammered them, and then it went quiet. And then at about 11 o'clock, we heard vehicles starting up. So what we basically did is we kept 2 platoons in the TB, obviously sergeant majors with us, and 2 platoons went out, and we had decided we're going out to ambush them. So the one platoon got lucky. So that was taken out. And all in all, the next morning when we did the count, we're doing a 360, we had taken out about 15 to 20 vehicles, including 2 PT-76s. And with the PT-76s, we didn't actually take them out, we had them. Because when I saw them, I still thought to myself, I'd see them move as Killy Euro. Here's my chance perhaps to throw a M26 grenade in it. But then we realized, that maybe Arms Corps and that wanted to look at this stuff. So that was here at about 11 o'clock in the evening. We finally wrapped up everything and we went to sleep at about 2 o'clock. Maybe there was a little bit of weed being smoken by the troops, but not much. Then we do the normal stuff, before we settle down and go quiet, and that platoon sergeants go around, make sure the claymores are out properly, make sure the LMGs are all correct, make sure that the mortar pipes are, not too under a tree that's going to bloody hit a thick tree or whatever it is. So just normal basic sort of principles that you go through. And then, slept like a log. Next morning, woke up. It was cold, if I can recall. Yeah, it was cold. So we made some fires to warm up. And now it was finding a safe landing zone, LZ, for the Pumas, because the Pumas were going to come in. 2 reasons: bring us ammunition, because we're not going anywhere, and to come now and get the sergeant major, the 2 women, and the 2 lieutenant colonels. We did another 360 to look for the kid, and we engaged with a small FAPLA group, which wasn't a problem for us, but that was basically the end of that activity. For myself personally, I would say the Milieuscope training, some parts of the infantry school. I want to give credit to my first lieutenant that I had at Charlie Company, Platoon 2, rest in peace, Nandus. Eventually got up to colonel. On my 2 bush trips with him, he really wanted to help me, and I obviously didn't tell him that I'm just coming here for 3 years. He knows I'm PF, and he said, you've got to become a platoon commander. And he said, in the 2 bush trips, you're going to do my job, and I'm just going to be there with you. And he taught me something, and he said to me, Kevin, and this is a lesson that I've always remembered, it's like, as an entrepreneurial person, you have rest days, and I learned that at the 3-2, where you're either resting in Buffalo or back at home in South Africa. Then you have your rehearsal practice days. Okay, and then you go match days when you go to the bush. In the business world, match day is when you go make money. So I was interested in match day. I said to him, teach me about match day. And he said, you're in the bush, Kevin. He said, it's 2 circles when it comes to a lieutenant and a platoon sergeant. And he said, no matter what anyone tells you, normally when a circles overlap, it's just a small part that overlaps where there's a common denominator. He said, you can take the 2 circles and almost put the one on top of the other. There's very little difference in the job. But he said the part that is different, like you ultimately make the decision. And what was the other one? He said, it's just sort of the protocol that when you give a situational report, or in the evenings before you go down to sleep, you give your RVs through in a coded way to the HQ. The platoon commander normally does that. So basically he said, for the 2 bush trips, you will watch me, the first couple of nights, and then you do that as well. So basically, in these 2 ops that I was with him, he basically taught me how to be a platoon commander. So I want to thank him. He was a fantastic guy. And as I said, I think he went by the military academy when he left. And then I think he came back to 3-2 many years later in a much more senior position. So to him, I'm very thankful. Also, I want to make mention to Colonel Sam Heap. He was my first company commander. He was the guy that commented on the video that went up of infantry school. And I must say that he was like General Patton, big guy, blonde hair, outgoing. You know, when there's a group of people and he arrives, you know that Sam's arrived. He had great personality, but, you know, he gave me a lot of freedom. So he taught me a hell of a lot. So, you know, I had those assets when I went into that ops. And, you know, obviously Charlie Company SPs were incredible. And plus Tiernes, wonderful guy. He was probably the guy that I served the longest under there in Charlie Company. And he led by example. What a fantastic guy. In actual fact, I met he later in life, and his wife was a colonel at the 1 mil, and his 2 boys, both were South African champions in wrestling, and I think the one became the African champion as well. Fantastic people, godly people, a real Afrikaans guy, conservative, never shouts, but very decisive. And then, as I said, you know, we had Costa that went off to Special Forces. My one went off to Special Forces. So, and all the troops had been involved in Sevarti the year before. So even though the white element group was inexperienced, I mean, you know, we were well prepared, if that makes sense. What I realized on that day, and no disrespect, we weren't doing it for God because we were up against communists. We weren't doing it for our mother and fathers and sisters, okay, or our butties or our whatever it is. We weren't doing it for the SADF. We were doing it for 3-2 Battalion and Charlie Company. That's how we played the game. That's how we rocked and rolled. And all we were interested in was looking after our buddies. No jibberguts in the game. No one needs to be told that they are jibberguts, because there weren't no jibberguts. And to be quite honest with you, there was very little talking being done. You know, everyone just knew what they needed to do. Regardless of rank, besides Tiernes, who was always the ultimate supreme commander, although he used to confer with some of us, but for the rest, no matter what their ranks were, they knew when it comes to stuff like this, that there's just certain people that will take the initiative. And if you were lower rank and you took the initiative, you never embarrassed the senior rank. You just did what you had to do. There we go. So that was the trip. We stayed obviously in the bush for many days thereafter. We had 1 or 2 little skirmishes, but it was probably with SWAPO and that. But, you know, that was basically the end of that. So there was a second part to Ops Protea, but that was in Buffalo. So before I move on to that, is there anything else you want to know, Chris, about that day?
Well, you know, Kevin, this is probably the best episode I've ever had on this show up to now. I thank you for that. I have a lot of questions, and I'm sure so many of us listening here will also have questions, but let me start at the beginning, because there's a lot of foreigners who's actually listening here, and you're welcome, all of you. You say that Tiernes was shot in the stomach. Now, I have to ask the obvious question, was he not wearing a armored vest or a bulletproof vest?
No, we never wore that. We used to just wear like it looked like a waistcoat, and you had 4 magazines in front, Bakelite magazines, like little pouches at the top where you used to put the equivalent of morphine. It starts with an S.
Socomet or something. The Special Forces guys use the word all the time, but
Yeah.
never...
That stuff stuff that James mentioned, we used that as well. We had a pencil flare, M26s, smoke grenades at the back, water bottle, maps, some first aid kit. And that was basically the chest webbing. So you used to almost put it on like a waistcoat and then click it over. And that was it.
Yes, I hear that you keep on referring to the commanding officer as Falcon. Is
Yes.
that the way you address your commander?
Well, I mean, we obviously call him Commandant Ferreira, but to like Big Daddy. So then with Commandant Ferreira, okay, because Eddie used to serve under him. His call sign, that's Commandant Ferreira, was Falcon. And as the war got bigger into the later years, like leading up to Quitacornavali and all of that stuff, then Falcon was moving up the ranks and, you know, he was taking charge of...
Okay, so this was like a personalized call sign.
Yes, Falcon.
And the commandant would be like a lieutenant colonel in other armies.
Correct.
Okay. And the Gary, I know it's a pretty South African slang, but the Gary is a Land Rover.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, they probably got it still from the Portuguese, you know, when they left.
Yeah, some of them were quite new. So this must have been obviously the Russian sort of contingent using the new stuff.
It was very big in the news. I was still at school in those days, but I recall when you were talking, it was actually on the news that the army was searching for this missing child. And
Yes.
I think as we go along with the series, as we go along with the program, there will be other soldiers who are also there, and they will tell us undoubtedly that the South African army was doing whatever they could to find that child.
Yes.
Even breaking off operations up to a point, of course.
Yes.
I just want to confirm that the 4 dead there were the 2 colonels, lieutenant colonels plus their wives, the 2 women.
Yes, that were the 4.
But they were in uniform. They were not executed or anything strange.
No. They ambushed us. I mean, later in life, the guys went over to Moscow and celebrated and reminisced about everything. I'm sure General Roland de Vries went, because, you know, he played a big role in that ops. Obviously, they weren't anywhere near us, but he was almost like the Falcon of mobility, because he was in the Rattle. So, you know, he was like our Falcon was men on the ground. He was the big daddy of mobile.
We got quite excited to say that we are going to record General de Vries Wednesday, about 2-3 days from now. I will certainly ask him about the missing child.
Yes.
I just want to also explain to the people, a 14.5 millimeter is like a heavy machine gun. It really fires a big bullet.
Anti-aircraft.
Anti-aircraft, yes. And
when
it's a good weapon. It's a very good weapon.
When it brings down the barrel and then shoots you on the ground, and there's trees around you, the trees disappear.
Oh, so it just cuts through. And it's actually bigger than a 5 Browning. So it's a bigger round.
Yes.
So it comes here. I can quite understand your reluctance with that type of thing.
My troops have had experience of 14.5s being shot at them.
And what did they say about me?
Like the one said to me, not a good idea if you've got a big ass. Meaning you basically dig yourself into the ground when it comes.
Okay, you said to us here that the food at Buffalo was better than anything else in the army, even the police. Why? Tell us about it.
The food?
Yeah.
Well, we had Jumbo there, was a staff sergeant. No, it was sergeant and then became a staff sergeant when I was there. He looked like Idi Amin. I don't know if he had been wounded, but he was no longer in the companies, obviously, and he ran the kitchens, plural. Okay. He handed out punishment too, when punishment was handed out. So he was also, in that sense, the guy that was responsible for discipline, and he just had a personality and an awe about himself that no matter what rank who knew him, there would always be a level of humbleness towards him. You know, he was without a doubt the SP Big Daddy.
We have a couple of pictures of him, of course, with Button Zanes.
Yeah, Button sitting there with him having a beer.
Yes, and it does look like Idi Amin, but I'm not sure that we're allowed to actually put this picture here without his permission.
No, he had passed away.
Oh, did he pass away? Well, in that case...
I used to call him Eddie, and he always had a smile on his face. And, you know, when there weren't many people in the base, and I used to like a 2,4 I used to run, and then go up there and then go into the kitchen, and he'd be there and he'd say, okay, what do you want to eat? You want an omelette? And then you stand there talking to him and he makes the omelette and everything. And he said, don't worry, you know, the toaster's sorting out the toast and the coffee. You go sit down and you eat. And then sometimes he comes and sits with you. And he used to like his drink. I never ever saw him drunk, but he used to like his drink. And, you know, if it was cold and it was in the morning, you know, he'd put his brandy or whatever it is in his coffee. And, you know, as long as his mess was being looked after and the kitchens had been looked after. And then he would, for example, say, going on to the river today, Kevin? He used to call me KD. And I go, yeah. Because at one stage I used to handle the boat, which we'll speak of a little bit later. It's called the Charlie Spiller, big thing. And he'll say, oh, yeah, I've got some stuff for you. And then you go to the back and he opens up there and they give us these boxes of Karoo, like a box of Karoo steaks. T-bone steaks. I can't remember how many, maybe 12 or 24 in them. Give that to us, say, that's to have a good day.
Yeah, that's nice.
The food was fantastic. And then he used to, you could go up there, morning tea. He would always have like scones and things like that with the tea and coffee. Afternoon tea with something to eat with it. And then he would make a braai on a Saturday evening for foreign listeners. That's a barbecue. So he would, and you know, you get, I mean, he used to make the staber pup. What do they call pup?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Grits. I think something like that, grits.
Yeah. So that used to come, and I mean, I always remember it was almost like, I don't know what word to use, but it was soft and fluffy. And then you used to have like the tomato and onion sauce with it.
Yeah, with Sheba sauce.
Yeah.
It's a great tradition of barbecue in South Africa. And I think the army and the police definitely were specialized.
Yeah. And for people from the Cape, we weren't really into pap. But, you know, you got it there, and boy, oh boy, you never forgot it.
Yeah, that's true. I think I ate pop like that the first time I was in the college.
Yep.
Normally we had like bread, you know, tomato, onion bread, which you put on.
Oh, no, you used to do that as well. Yeah. And then obviously, you know, the bar's right there by you. The alcohol was really, really cheap. In that period up there, you know, besides the normal spirits and beer, I noticed there was a lot of, it was a white bottle. It was, I think it was a type of rum from maybe the Caribbean, Costa Rica. And then there was a like a fizzy drink, cold duck, like a reddish color. And then there was another make starting with an M that was also fizzy, but that was white. And so that used to be consumed when we used to get onto the boats and that, you know, you had breakfast on the boat and that, we would obviously start off with that.
Okay, well, that was in the base. What would you be eating out on patrol?
On the patrol, we had, what do they used to call it? It used to come in a box. like almost like a shoebox with plastic over the top, called a rat
Ration
pack.
packs. Yeah, rat packs.
Yeah, that's a ration pack. And then in there, I always remember there was like a white tube of condensed milk for energy, chocolate bars,
Coffee and tea.
A
And then this
milkshake.
horrible thing called chili con carne or something.
Yeah.
Oh my word, it was dreadful.
Then there was, yeah, you're right there. And then there was like dog biscuits. They were thick biscuits.
Fantastic. Really nice to eat.
So you could put on the fire, soften it up on your little, I can't remember what they call it, but we had this little thing that used to open up with these white little things that you used to burn.
Yeah. The fire tablet inside it. And you fold it up. Yes.
Espit.
Something like that. This is like a little oven, but it fits in your. It's like a cigarette box. It's really good.
Yeah.
I'll try and get a picture for us.
Then there were little tins.
Yeah.
With yams in it, mincemeat, vegetables. Then there was also some sort of porridge thing in there. And that was basically for a day.
It was enough food, and it was very energy efficient. I mean, but I love the milkshakes. I have to say, you shook it. It was in a little packet. Looks like a condom almost, and you shake it, and then you just really good.
Yeah, and then there was some cool drink in there as well, in like a white thing, similar to the milkshake. And that lasted for a day. And I'd say realistically, we used to probably carry 10 days of it with us.
Quite heavy.
Yeah. And then water used to be 2 liters, 2 liters, 2 liters, 2 liters, 2 liters. So that would be 2, 4, 6, 10 liters of water. But, many times we run out of water and we just drink from the kashimbas and that. And, oh, Jesus, sometimes that water was so crap because it was green. So you don't want to drink the water during the day. So you wait for it, the nighttime, for the water to get cold. And somehow in the nighttime, with it being cold, you could drink it. But, I'll be honest with you, most of the guys didn't worry about like malaria tablets and that, myself included. I mean, we just, because of the SPs, these things didn't bother them. They used to just do their own thing. So we should just follow suit.
While you're on patrol, quiet or people talking to each other?
They knew when to be quiet and they knew when to talk. And because our trips were 4 or 5 weeks and that, naturally you can't go 4 or 5 weeks not chatting. So sometimes the platoon sergeant would have to say to them, shut up. But generally speaking, they knew their place. One thing I would say about them too is because they've been doing it year in, here, they were actually in the bush tidier than the white leader element. When they sat down to eat, it was an eating experience. Maybe with people that are only going to stick a year there, they're just going to eat, get it finished. But with them, it had to be like an eating experience. So it was always nice to go and sit, because they used to sit in buddies in the temporary base. It's always nice to go and sit with them and just watch their mannerism. It's like they really they enjoy preparing their meal, and they all used to carry their Tabasco sauce with them.
Yeah, they made the best of what they could, because that was their life. They had no other life.
Yeah. So the food was big experience, and then some used to take yellow pup with them, because they used to like the yellow pup. Some used to have pilchards with that red sauce. They'd sneak that into their mochilas, which you carry. But I will tell you something about food, and it just shows you how people operate and think and behave. So I would go and sit with them sometimes, and then they'll pass me the fire bucket where the coffee's in, pass it to me, I drink, give it back, he drinks, he gives it to his buddy, okay, I don't want to drink too much because it's theirs, but maybe I have about 3-4 swigs or whatever it is. So anyhow, I'm back in South Africa on holiday, either before or after a course. And I never had a permanent girlfriend in that period, but I'd met this woman, and she had, through a friend of mine, and she said, oh, my parents are having a big party on Saturday evening. I'd like you to come over and you can sleep over and that. And so I knew, oh, you can drink and that, and arrived there. And very quickly, she was a very nice person, but I realized she'd come from a very liberal background. And they lived pretty close to the University of Cape Town. Her father was a doctor. And when I got there, I realized these are real liberal people. In those days, there was almost like, I think, like Helen Suzman party. She was always fighting with PW in Parliament.
Progressive Federals or something like that.
So her one cousin that was there, older than her, he must have been about 27, 28, he was actually part of that party, and his father that was there too actually stood as an MP in that party. So anyhow, so the evening's going on, and they got a barbecue and everything there, big home, and outside's a big pool, and I see in the far corner there's like a little flatlet type of thing, and that's where the domestic lady lives, and that's where the guy that mows the lawn and cleans the pool stays as well. So I checked that out, and it must be about 12:30, and it was summertime. Yeah, because it was an infantry course, so it would normally around early December. So the sliding door into the kitchen is massive, and there's a lot of us congregating now in the kitchen and outside on the patio. And this one cousin of hers starts to nibble at me. Oh, yeah, you're in the army, or you're on the border. But he doesn't, I've never told her what unit I'm in and that. And he niggles me about, oh, isn't that a racist war or whatever it is? Obviously, the word apartheid gets thrown in. And I think to myself, oh, I like this girl, so I'm going to have to behave. I'll be honest with you. If I didn't like her, I would have ripped into him. So I go, oh, no, not really. I said, it's conscription, and if it was such a bad thing, many of them would say, I'm not going. He goes, oh, nonsense, they'd be sent to jail and all that. And I think he's come up with this conversation because he wants to pursue it to the end. And then I made a call that could have made me look like a fool. I walked up to where the washing basin was, the sink. And in my mind, I said, I'm almost sure that I'm going to see something below that sink that's just going to null all of them right there. And I opened it up. And there it was, eating utensils for the two that sleep outside. They're eating utensils. So I said to him, I think his name was Paul. I said, Paul? He goes, yes, Kevin. But he can see he's up for it. I said, do me a favor, could you just come here quickly? He comes over to me, but I did it on purpose now that I saw it. I got the attention of his father and some others. So they're looking, come over. I said, just bend down and check that. What do you see? He goes, well, what do you mean? I said, no. Tell me, what do you see there? Now I raised my voice a little bit, but not too heavy. So this lady, this girlfriend, she comes across to me. She's standing by. Oh, is there a problem, Kev? I said, no, it's going to be sorted out in 2 minutes. So I said to them, I want to share something with you. In your home, you probably are exactly like this because you're all the same. So in your home, if you were to go there now, I'd see that as well because they had a big home down the road too. I said, where I come from, what actually happens is that stuff is never somewhere else. In actual fact, I go one step further. I said, when I'm in the bush with my guys, they're all black. They make one coffee, we just circulate it. You know, lips going onto the same mug. You know what I mean, Paul? You know what I mean? He looks at me, he's gone. That's the end of the conversation. So the next morning, her father comes to me, the doctor, and he says, on behalf of the family, we would like to apologize.
Yeah, it takes a big man to do it.
Hmm.
But that's the way it was many times in South Africa. People, I think, have a wrong idea of what was actually happening there. If
Right,
you weren't
so if you
there,
don't
you
mind,
wouldn't really know.
So if you don't mind, I'd like to now just share some exciting things with you about how we rock and roll back at Buffalo. So can I proceed?
Yes, I just have one last question, Gav. Were you ever on the instructions about the Cubans or Russians, the Soviet Union people, which you might have found? Did the army issue any instructions on it, or?
In the next ops, which I will discuss a year later, around about the same time, Operation Mibos, 3-2, heavily involved, a much smaller contingent of the SADF, but Roland de Vries was there again with his Rations and then one parachute battalion. There, we were told, just go for plan, SWAPO. The big HQ of theirs with bases in the area and try and avoid FAPLA. But, you know, that doesn't actually work like that in reality. So we did engage with them. And I think it was in the following year, that year, 1982, because Protea was 81. In 82, I think the first agreement was done. It could have been the Lusaka agreement on that. I didn't care about things like that. But, you know, Buttons will be able to tell you all about that. And then it was like a little bit of oh, we got them, we can now attack them. Oh, no, you've got to stand back, and not for military reasons. So it already started in 82.
Yeah, I just want to say to everyone here, the fact that we are getting Roland de Vries, probably the most famous general in the SADF, is because of Kevin. He's the one who made the first initial contacts, and that's where it comes from. And now you can tell your story.
Right. So, first time ever that the whole battalion goes to the bush. Mission accomplished. We at Charlie Company were very fortunate. We lost no lives on that ops. So we're all happy bunnies. And we're coming back now out of Angola. And I remember, I don't think we might have Charlie Company, because we were further up north. We might have flown back with Pumas to the tactical HQ, but I think they should call it the Hague, helicopter admin something. So it was still in the bush. We flew back there. Because bear in mind, the other part of the military were also moving out of Angola. You know, they don't hang around, they move out. So now we're on all these trucks, and I'm pretty sure they were sawmills. And we make our way back now to Buffalo. So we're going to Buffalo, and we're on that road coming from Rundu. And we come to Buffalo. And this, as you go over the bridge, it's quite a long white road. And this white road goes towards Amigo 3-1 Battalion, up there to Fort Doppie's Mapacha and Katima Molila area. So all these vehicles are on that white road, and the first vehicle comes to a halt, waiting now to go into our base. And we probably maybe 2-3 companies back in this long convoy. So it's a long convoy. Of course, I remember we were on the back of these sawmills and that, and the guys got their spits out and they're making the last of the coffee, and I had a bit of the whiskey left, and 1 or 2 other guys had. So there's a little bit of alcohol going around in the coffee and that. And then up front, we saw some flares. It was probably pencil flares, like a .22 type of thing. And then there were some 1,000 foots, but no fire, no weapons. Now the trucks go in. And naturally, we're going to go down to the company lines. But this convoy is not in the order of how the company lines are. So obviously, some need to overtake the others to get in line so that we can get into the company lines correctly, which is all along the river are these mossy nests, and at the back are the tents of the troops. So for the first time ever, we're all back in the base together. No one on leave, no one in the bush. And the bush telegraph goes down the lines. None of us can come to the HQ for food or alcohol. And boy, oh boy, we fully loaded. And what we used to have at Buffalo, but it started to phase out the longer I was there, is we used to have inter-platoon competitions. This would go like this. You shower in the evening, you get dressed, you go up to the mess, you have some drinks, you have some delightful food, you buy some more alcohol, you bring it down to the mossy nester, you start drinking, you start listening to Bad Company, Human League, Eye of the Tiger, etc. And then, one guy can't help himself. He'll go outside the mossy nest and fire off something, AK-47, whatever it is, 1,000-foot flare. And then further up the road on the river, there's a party in Alpha Company, and they go, you know what, boys, we might be under attack here. I'm going to give a volley there. I think it comes from Charlie Company, and there'd be like a volley of rounds over. So this would be like inter-platoon little attacks, and that's not uncommon. Fortunately, I think one guy got seriously hurt once, but generally speaking, it will all be okay. In those days, we had a major, he wasn't an ops guy, and we had a sergeant major, Erasmus, nicknamed Moose to the whites. To the blacks, he was Machocha, who was quite a big, thick-set guy. He was a wrestler, and he would bark at us and go mad and that, but it just all be ignored and life would continue. But this time around, no alcohol, no food. They've been very disrespectful. So there's one sergeant, he had a nickname, RPG. He had a, like it was a 4-inch Colt, 357 Colt. So he's waltzing up and down, but you can see our RPG just likes to cause shit. They called him RPG because in the previous ops, he had shot out quite a few vehicles. So he's got this thing, he's walking like this. Don't private firearm. And he's like really getting the guys excited. And that was it. A couple of guys shot off a couple of rounds, and then the whole company over the river was pyrotechnics. And then the troops at the back thought, oh, well, if they can do it, we can do it. So the stuff was coming over our heads and into the river, because there was an island in the middle of the river. M26s were landing there. Some didn't go off, so they had to flag it the next morning. There was RPG airbursts, 1,000-foot flares, you name it, LMG, 60mm mortars. So obviously now the HQ knew. The puppies there, he was shouting. RPG was saying, yeah, we are puppies that have been neglected, and the puppies are going to piss on the carpet tonight. And up and down it's going. And RPG had a little place up there on the hill, so he was orchestrating everything from the hill, and then eventually he was coming down the company lines, because we were outside the mossy nest and it was all going off. And then the major and the sergeant major Moose, he was also the RSM of the training school of the RLI. The two of them are in the Gary, and they coming now down to the lines. And they stopped there next to Charlie Company. Foxtrot was to the right of me, and there was a sergeant lying there. And I might not have the weapons right, but he had run out of ammunition with the one weapon, and he had now swung over to the other weapon. And the major said, "What are you doing?" why are you using that bush? Why are you shooting with that weapon? And he looked up and he said, well, my fucking AK-47 ammunition, I've got no rounds. I'm now using another weapon with rounds, that sort of attitude. And he knew that everyone was doing it, because even when the sergeant major, the major arrived there, the guys very close to the two were firing. So, you know, this was like, almost like it's all of us. So we can't all be fired. It's all of us. We can't all go to jail. So that all then softened down. Needless to say, we had to live off our rat packs. And then the next day, we had like a little assembly area where we all went. And then Koos Crocodile was waiting there. And I wasn't quite sure what he was attached to. He might have been in the Hague with Gary Wright, or maybe with one of the companies. And he was there. And he then blasted 3 groups. He blasted the MP. He blasted the company base commander, the major, and the sergeant major of the base. He blasted them for simply not providing food and opening the pub. He blasted the company commanders for saying you were hiding. And he then told us that we lacked discipline. Well, that night, the pubs were all open. The food was nicely prepared. We were eating well. And then almost, I think the very next day, a lot of the white guys were going back to South Africa on holiday. So, of course, Falcon cornered them at Rundu. So, boys, what actually happened back there? And then the rumor goes, he phoned the base commander, and we never heard a word again about it.
Well, that's a good commander, isn't it? Because, I mean, it's the least you can expect when you get back to bases to get food. Or at least, you know, open the pop. I mean, it's really childish not to do so.
Yes.
Oh, Kevin, thank you. You know, I think before we go on, we should perhaps take a break. We've been talking an hour and 20 minutes. This was fantastic. I must tell you all, I've really enjoyed this episode. I say to all of you once again, there's always an invitation here. If you want to join the program, just email me and we'll take it from there. I don't have a direct route or phone call or something like that to get hold of you. So it's for you to contact me. So if you feel you want to come here and tell your story, please come. You're welcome. All of you. Everyone is welcome. And for now, I'll greet you until we meet again. God bless.